There is a power within you that has never failed you, never abandoned you, never weakened, even when you believed it had. That power is not found in your circumstances. It is not found in your past. It is not found in other people, money, opportunity, luck, or time. Your only true power is your identity, not the name on your birth certificate, not the story you tell about where you came from, not the labels placed upon you, but the quiet inner knowing of who you assume yourself to be, because life does not respond to your wishes. Life does not respond to your struggles. Life does not respond to your prayers spoken in fear. Life responds to your self-concept. It responds to what you accept as true about yourself. Every experience you are having right now is not random. It is not punishment. It is not chance. It is a reflection of the identity you have been occupying. The moment you truly understand this, blame dissolves, victimhood collapses, waiting ends. You realize nothing outside of me has authority over my life. Nothing outside of me decides what I can become. Nothing outside of me determines what is possible. Only the identity I choose to live from. You have been taught to chase outcomes, chase money, chase love, chase success, chase confidence. But chasing implies separation. It says, I am not that yet. And the moment you claim, I am not, you instruct life to agree. Creation does not follow desire. Creation follows assumption. Who you assume yourself to be is who you become. Not someday, not after effort, not after struggle, but naturally, effortlessly, automatically. If you assume you are worthy, you do not chase worthiness, you express it. If you assume you are successful, you do not beg for opportunity, you move as success. If you assume you are chosen, you do not seek validation, you expect alignment. Identity is the soil, circumstances are the harvest, and no farmer blames the fruit. They examine the seed. You are always planting, with every inner conversation, with every assumption, with every silent declaration of I am. Most people say, I will believe it when I see it, but the law of being says, you will see it when you believe it. Not belief as effort, not belief as repetition, but belief as acceptance, a quiet inner decision. This is who I am now. And the instant that decision is made sincerely, reality begins reorganizing itself, not because you force it, not because you manipulate it, but because reality has no choice but to reflect consciousness. You are not here to become someone. You are here to select who you are. The version of you who feels powerful already exists. The version of you who is confident already exists. The version of you who is abundant already exists. They are not in the future. They are states of consciousness, rooms you may enter, doors that open inward. And the key is assumption. Ask yourself, who would I be if I knew I was unstoppable? How would I think? How would I move? How would I speak to myself? Then begin doing those things internally, not pretending, not hoping, but accepting. Assume the posture of the one you desire to be internally, because the outer world is the echo. Identity is not built by affirmations shouted into fear. Identity is built by quiet inner alignment, by deciding, I no longer agree with the old story. I no longer identify with limitation. I no longer wear the costume of my past. From this moment forward, I choose to know myself as powerful, not because evidence supports it, but because I choose it. And choice is the highest form of power. You do not need permission to change identity. You do not need approval. You do not need proof. You do not need time. You need willingness. Willingness to let go of who you have been pretending to be. Willingness to release the comfort of familiar struggle. Willingness to stand inwardly as someone new. This is not about becoming perfect. This is not about denying challenges. This is about recognizing where authority truly resides, not in circumstances, not in other people, not in history, but in consciousness, your consciousness. When you change why, our identity, you do not fight the world rearranges itself. People treat you differently, opportunities appear, doors open, not because the world changed first, but because you did. You were never powerless. You were only unconscious of your authorship. From this moment on, remember, every time you say I am, you are writing a script. Choose your words wisely. Say, I am capable, I am chosen, I am secure, I am valuable, I am powerful. Not as hope, not as fantasy, but as declaration, because your identity is not a description, it is a command, and life obeys. You do not need more power, you do not need better conditions, you do not need a different past. You only need a new identity. Decide who you are, accept it, live from it, and watch reality conform, because your identity is the only power you have, and it is absolute. You do not attract what you want, you express who you believe you are. This statement quietly dismantles the way most PE Opal think about creation. It shifts the entire focus away from chasing, reaching, and hoping, and places it back where it has always belonged, on being. The human mind has been trained to believe that desire is the engine of change, that wanting something intensely enough will somehow pull it closer. But desire by itself only confirms absence. The very act of wanting subtly declares, I do not have. And life, which mirrors inner declarations with astonishing precision, reflects that state back as continued lack. Expression, however, operates from a different dimension of consciousness. You express what you accept as natural to you. You express what feels normal. You express what aligns with your sense of identity. You do not wake up each day trying to attract your own name, your age, or your existence. You simply are. And because you are, those facts remain stable. In the same way, everything else in your life follows the same principle. Whatever feels natural to your inner ident, it shows up without effort. Most people believe they are trying to change their world, but in truth they are always broadcasting who they believe themselves to be. Every inner conversation, every silent assumption, every automatic reaction is an announcement of identity. If you believe you are overlooked, you will unconsciously express behaviors, expectations, and emotional tones that match being overlooked. If you believe you are respected, you will move, speak, and respond from that knowing. The world is not choosing how to treat you, it is responding to the version of you that is being expressed. This is why two people can take identical actions and receive completely different outcomes. One acts from the identity of someone who expects success. The other acts from the identity of someone who hopes for success. The actions may look similar on the surface, but the inner state behind them is entirely different. And life responds to the state, not the surface behavior, expression. Effortless. Attraction implies struggle. Expression implies inevitability. You do not strain to express your personality. You do not labor to express your habits. They flow automatically because they are anchored in your self-concept. In the same way, wealth, love, confidence, and fulfillment are not things to pull toward you. They are traits that flow out of a certain identity. When someone says, I am trying to attract abundance, what they are truly saying beneath the words is, I do not see myself as abundant. That self-view becomes the dominant broadcast. Life then faithfully mirrors the inner truth, not the spoken desire. Desire may scream, but identity whispers, and the whisper always wins. This realization returns responsibility to the only place it belongs, self-definition, not as blame, but as liberation. If you are not expressing what you want, it is not because something outside of you is broken, it is because your inner image has not shifted yet. The moment our image changes, expression changes naturally. You do not become confident by trying to attract confidence. You become confident by accepting yourself as someone who is confident. You do not become loved by trying to pull love from others. You become loved by knowing yourself as someone who is worthy of love. The outer world simply echoes the inner knowing. Identity is always ahead of experience. Experience is always trailing behind identity. This means you do not wait for proof before changing who you are. You change who you are, and proof follows, not as a reward, but as a reflection. Life is not a magnet responding to your wishes. Life is a mirror responding to your self-concept. And mirrors do not argue. They do not negotiate. They reflect. The moment you stop asking, "How do I get?" and begin asking, "Who am I being?" you step into a different relationship with reality. You stop performing, you stop begging, you stop convincing, you begin allowing yourself to occupy a new sense of self, allowing yourself to assume a new identity, allowing yourself to express a new truth. And once that truth is accepted inwardly, the world has no choice but to agree. Identity precedes action, consciousness precedes circumstance. This understanding reverses the common belief that effort creates identity. Most people assume that if they act differently long enough, they will eventually become someone new. But action is not the origin. Action is the echo. It is the visible movement that rises out of an invisible state of consciousness. Before a single choice is made, before a single behavior appears, there is already an inner position being occupied. You are always acting from who you believe yourself to be, not toward who you want to become. Watch your own life closely, and you will notice this truth. You do not wake up and decide to act like yourself. You simply do. Your preferences, reactions, habits, and tendencies flow without deliberation because they are expressions of identity. In the same way, every action you take in the larger areas of life, money, relationships, career, creativity, is a direct extension of the self-image you hold. This means that trying to force action without changing identity is exhausting. It feels like swimming upstream. You may discipline yourself for a while, push yourself, motivate yourself, and create temporary movement, but it rarely lasts. Eventually, you snap back to your familiar pattern, not because you are lazy or broken, but because your consciousness has not shifted. You attempted to build a new structure on an old foundation. When consciousness changes, action changes effortlessly. A person who sees themselves as healthy does not struggle to take care of their body. A person who sees themselves as capable does not battle themselves to try. A person who sees themselves as successful naturally thinks in terms of solutions, opportunities, and expansion. Their behaviors appear disciplined, but internally they feel normal. Circumstances operate the same way. They are not independent forces operating randomly. They are frozen expressions of past states of consciousness. What you see around you is not happening to you, it is happening from you. The environment is a delayed photograph of inner assumptions. This explains why waiting for circumstances to improve before feeling better never works. If consciousness creates circumstance, then waiting on circumstance is waiting on an effect to become a cause. It is placing power in the shadow instead of the source. The moment you occupy a new inner position, the outer world begins reorganizing, often in subtle ways at first. Conversations change, ideas arise, opportunities appear, people respond differently, not because you forced outcomes, but because you are broadcasting a different state. You never act yourself into a new identity. You assume yourself into one. The assumption may feel unfamiliar at first. It may feel unrealistic. But unfamiliar does not mean false. It only means new. Every identity you currently wear was once unfamiliar. At some point in your life, you learned who you were allowed to be. Those lessons hardened into self-concept. Now they feel permanent, but they are not. Consciousness is flexible. Identity is fluid. You can decide inwardly to know yourself differently, not as fantasy, not as denial, but as a quiet inner shift in perspective. Instead of saying, "I will try to become confident," you move to, "I am someone who carries myself with confidence." Instead of, "I hope things improve," you move to, "I am someone for whom things work out." These are not affirmations meant to convince. They are selections of state. From that selection, action emerges naturally. You will find yourself making choices that align without strain. You will notice old habits losing emotional charge. You will notice new behaviors forming without force. This is not because you are controlling yourself. Because your center has moved. Circumstances cannot resist a sustained change in consciousness. They may lag, they may rearrange through unexpected channels, but they must follow, not because you are manipulating reality, but because reality is responding to what you are being. Your power is not in what you do. Your power is in who you are before you do anything at all. And from that silent position, everything else flows. The world mirrors self-concept, not effort. Most people have been conditioned to believe that effort is the currency of life, that the more they struggle, sacrifice, push, and grind, the more life will eventually reward them. Yet if effort were the true creator, then the most exhausted people on earth would also be the most fulfilled. But we know that is not the case. Hard work alone does not guarantee alignment. It does not guarantee love, respect, abundance, or peace. Something deeper is always at play. Self-concept is that deeper force, self-concept I, the story you quietly hold about who you are, what you deserve, what is normal for you, and what you can expect from life. It is not the story you tell others. It is the story you tell yourself when no one is listening. And that story becomes the blueprint from which your world is formed. Two people can work equally hard, apply for the same opportunities, and invest the same number of hours, yet experience completely different outcomes. One seems to move forward with ease, the other feels blocked at every turn. The difference is not effort, the difference is expectation. One expects life to support them, the other expects life to resist them. Both are proven right. The mirror never argues. When you look into a mirror and see your reflection, you do not blame the mirror for what appears. You do not try to change the mirror. You understand that the reflection must change when you change. Life operates by the same principle. The external world is reflecting your internal image. If why, who see yourself as unlucky, life presents unlucky patterns. If you see yourself as unworthy, life reflects situations that reinforce that belief. If you see yourself as chosen, capable, and supported, life rearranges to match that assumption. Effort often becomes a way of compensating for a poor self-concept. People try to prove their worth through overworking. They try to earn love through overgiving. They try to secure safety through control. But proof-seeking always implies doubt, and doubt sustains the very identity one is trying to escape. The world does not respond to what you are trying to fix. It responds to what you believe is true about yourself. This is why some people appear lucky. They are not performing rituals or pushing harder than everyone else. They simply expect good outcomes. That expectation shapes how they interpret events, how they respond to challenges, and how long they persist. Their self-concept quietly positions them in favorable paths. A person who sees themselves as successful notices opportunities others overlook. A person who sees themselves as rejected notices every perceived slight. Both are looking at the same world but filtering it through different identities. Effort without inner alignment often feels heavy. It feels like swimming against an invisible current. Aligned action, however, feels natural. It may still require energy, but it does not carry the emotional weight of self-betrayal. It feels like an extension of who you are. When self-concept shifts, behavior follows automatically. You stop chasing validation because you no longer feel starved for it. You stop tolerating poor treatment because it no longer matches your inner IMA. You stop sabotaging progress because success feels safe. The outer changes seem dramatic. The inner shift was simple. This does not mean you stop taking action. It means action becomes an expression, not a plea. You are no longer trying to convince life of your value. You are operating from the assumption that your value is already established. Life then reflects that assumption. The mirror does not ask how hard you tried. The mirror does not measure your struggle. The mirror shows who you believe yourself to be, and it shows it faithfully. Every time, assumption is creative power, not hope, not wishing, not force. Assumption. An assumption is a quiet decision about what is true. It is the mental posture you take before evidence appears. It is the internal, of course, that sits beneath your thoughts, emotions, and expectations. You are assuming constantly whether you realize it or not. You assume how people will treat you. You assume what kind of outcomes are likely. You assume what is possible for you and what is not. And these assumptions are not passive. They are active forces shaping the structure of your reality. Most people think creation happens through intense desire, but desire often contains tension. It carries the feeling of distance. It says, I do not have. Assumption carries a different frequency. It says, this is so, and life responds to the feeling of isness, not to the longing of want. Consider how many things you experience. daily that you never consciously try to create. You assume your phone will work. You assume the floor will support your weight. You assume your name is yours. These assumptions are so natural that you do not question them, and because you do not question them, they remain stable. Stability in experience comes from stability in assumption. When you assume something to be true, you begin to think from it rather than about it. Thinking from a state is entirely different from thinking of a state. Thinking, oh, wealth says, wouldn't it be nice? Thinking from wealth says, what should I do with my resources? Thinking of confidence says, I wish I felt better. Thinking from confidence says, I'll handle it. One is imagination, the other is identity. Assumption moves imagination into identity. This is why repeating words without inner acceptance produces little change. If the words contradict your deeper assumption, the deeper assumption wins. The subconscious does not respond to what you say once or twice. It responds to what you accept as true. Acceptance is the doorway. When you accept an idea as real, your nervous system adjusts. Your perception shifts. Your choices subtly change. You begin to notice pathways that were previously invisible. You begin to dismiss possibilities that no longer match your internal position. None of this feels dramatic. It feels natural. And that naturalness is the signature of real creation. Assumption is not pretending. Pretending is exhausting, as assumption is settling. It is the feeling of landing in a new inner home. People often ask, how do I know if I truly assumed something? The answer is simple. You stop seeking proof. When something is assumed, you do not look for constant reassurance. You move through life with a quiet expectation. The inner question mark dissolves. This does not mean doubts never arise. It means doubts no longer have authority. They pass through instead of taking root. Assumption also explains why sudden life shifts sometimes happen without obvious external cause. Someone decides internally, I am done being this version of myself. Not in anger, not in desperation, but in clarity. That internal decision becomes a new assumption. And within weeks or months, their environment looks completely different. Not because the universe rewarded them, not because they earned it, but because they changed the instruction being broadcast. Every assumption is an instruction. I am unlucky. I am chosen. I am always behind. I am always supported. I struggle. Things work out for me. None of these are neutral. They are creative commands. Your dominant assumptions shape your emotional baseline. Your emotional baseline shapes your behavior. Your behavior shapes your experiences. But the root is always assumption. Change the assumption, and the chain reaction begins automatically. You do not need to control every thought. You do not need to monitor every emotion. You need to decide what is true about you. That decision, when accepted, becomes law, not outside of you, within you. And what becomes law within you inevitably becomes visible around you. Transformation happens inwardly before it appears outwardly. Nothing in your outer world changes first. Not the relationship, not the bank account, not the opportunity, not the recognition. All change begins as a shift in inner atmosphere, yet most people live as if the opposite is true. They believe something outside must move before they are allowed to feel different inside. They tell themselves, when I get the job, I'll feel confident. When they love me, I'll feel worthy. When things improve, I'll feel at peace. This places emotional authority in circumstances. It hands the steering wheel of identity to the external world. But the outer world has no creative intelligence of its own. It arranges itself according to inner direction. Before a new experience shows up physically, it must be accepted psychologically. Before a door opens outwardly, it must be opened inwardly. Before you live as someone new, you must privately allow yourself to be someone new. This inner allowance is subtle. It is not fireworks. It is not dramatic. It is a quiet reorientation of self-perception. You start seeing yourself differently, not in fantasy, not in denial, but in possibility. You begin to entertain a new story, Maybe I am more capable than I thought. Maybe I am allowed to have ease. Maybe I am so. Mione, whose life expands. That small shift is the seed. At first, nothing on the outside appears to change. This is where most people quit. They assume the inner movement was imaginary because the mirror has not updated yet. But mirrors always lag behind the movement of the one standing before them. The inner change is real. The delay is natural. When you persist in a new inner orientation, your emotional reactions begin to change. Things that once triggered you lose intensity. Situations that once felt impossible start feeling negotiable. You begin responding rather than reacting. This is not willpower. This is identity realignment. Your nervous system calibrates to your new self-concept. You feel safer occupying larger possibilities. You feel less attached to old limitations. You begin making choices that would have previously felt uncomfortable. These choices are not forced. They feel obvious. That is how you know transformation is underway. Outward changes then begin appearing as side effects. Why? Meet different people. You notice different opportunities. You have different conversations, not because the world suddenly became generous, but because you became receptive. You started living from a different internal posture. Inner transformation also changes what you tolerate. You stop entertaining situations that violate your new self image. You stop negotiating with disrespect. You stop rationalizing stagnation, not through aggression, not through drama, but through quiet disinterest. Old patterns collapse when they no longer have identity support. This is why forcing external change without inner shift often recreates the same problems in new forms. A new job with the same dissatisfaction, a new relationship with the same dynamic, a new city with the same loneliness. The scenery changes, but the projector remains the same. When the projector changes, every scene changes. You do not need to hunt for transformation. You do not need to chase reinvention. You need to cultivate inner permission, permission to feel worthy now, permission to feel capable now, permission to feel supported now. Feeling is not emotional hype. Feeling is acceptance. It is the sense of this is allowed for me. Once something feels allowed, life begins finding ways to agree. You may not see the bridge between inner shift and outer result. You do not need to. Responsibility is not to figure out how. Your responsibility is to become familiar with a new sense of self. Sit with it. Normalize it. Let it feel ordinary, because ordinary states express themselves easily. The extraordinary only seems extraordinary until it becomes your internal norm. Transformation is not an event. It is a change in self-relationship. And once that relationship changes inwardly, the world has no choice but to follow. You are always living from an identity. Choose it deliberately. There is no neutral position in life. You are never in a state of not being anything. At very moment you are operating from a self-concept. Whether you are aware of it or not, you are being someone right now, thinking as someone, expecting as someone, reacting as someone. Even indecision is an identity. Even confusion is a posture of being. Most people believe they are waiting to become someone, but in truth they are already being someone. They simply did not choose it consciously. Their identity was assembled through past experiences, conditioning, emotional impressions, and repeated stories. Over time, these impressions hardened into a sense of this is who I am, not because it was inevitable, not because it was destined, but because it was never questioned. Unchosen identities feel like facts. Chosen identities feel like decisions. The moment you realize you have been unconsciously living from an identity, a new level of power becomes available. You stop trying to fix circumstances and start examining the position you are living from. Ask yourself quietly, who do I believe myself to be in this area of my life? What do I expect as normal? What feels realistic for me? The answers reveal the identity currently active. Change identity by fighting it. You change identity by selecting a new one. Selection is not dramatic. It is not emotional, it is a calm inner acknowledgement. I choose to know myself differently now. Most people wait for permission to make this choice. They wait for evidence. They wait for external validation. They wait for someone else to confirm they are allowed to be more. But no one outside of you has access to the control panel. Identity is self-assigned, always has been. You can decide to be someone who expects good outcomes. You can decide to be someone who respects themselves. You can decide to be someone who moves through life with quiet confidence, not because you are perfect, not because you have everything figured out, but because you choose that orientation. At first, the new identity may feel unfamiliar. The mind may protest. Old memories may surface. Old self-descriptions may attempt to reclaim authority. This does not mean the new identity is false. It means the old one is accustomed to being in charge. Do not argue with the old identity. Do not analyze it. Do not try to destroy it. Simply stop feeding it. Begin feeding the new selection. You feed an identity through attention, through inner language, through the way you reference yourself internally. When you catch yourself saying, I'm just not that kind of person, pause, ask, who would I be if I were? Then gently move into that posture, not through force, through allowance. Deliberate identity is not about becoming artificial. It is about uncovering capacity. Every identity you desire is already latent within you. You are not importing something foreign. You are activating something dormant. The version of you who is calm, the version of you who is capable, the version of you who is abundant. These are not fantasies. They are states of being. You step into states by agreement, by saying inwardly, yes, this is me now, from that agreement. Behavior shifts, tone shifts, energy shifts, expectations shift, not overnight as a performance, but gradually as a stabilization. Soon, the new identity begins to feel normal. The old one feels distant, and the outer world starts mirroring the change, not as magic, not as coincidence, but as alignment. You are always living from an identity. Now you are living from one on purpose. And that is the difference between drifting and directing, between repeating and creating, between unconscious existence and conscious authorship. Choose who you are. Then let life reflect your choice.